Seth Wilson, thank you for your service. Air Force pilot turned real estate mogul. Welcome to this interview. I really appreciate you taking the time to communicate with us. All the fun and successes you've had during this topsy-turvy multifamily market that we're seeing right now. Could you just, I mean, I've known you for years. You're an author, you're a publisher, you're a father, you are a family man. But more so than that, you made the pivot that I think is important, moving from esteemed military service to going into the entrepreneurialism of being a multifamily manager. And you've done a very good job doing that and raising capital. And a lot of people haven't. And so I think what we're looking for is to fill in the gaps here on what made you successful versus other people. So if it's all right with you, tell us a little bit about your story, Seth.
Wow. Okay. Well, thanks for the intro. Yeah, my name's Seth Wilson. I'm from here in the Central States, Kansas City, Missouri. I was Air Force ROTC in college, became a navigator on a top secret spy plane. I wanted to be a pilot, so I left that and became a pilot in the Missouri Air National Guard flying the C-130. While I was active duty, I knew that I wanted to get into real estate. Unfortunately, that was in 2009. I had no money, no experience, and no connections. So that didn't work out so well. So I kind of bootstrapped myself and I started my real estate entrepreneurial journey by purchasing a single mobile home in a place called Carter Lake, Iowa, of all places. And I did that on terms. So I'd buy them for cash, cheap, fix them up, and then I'd sell them to the tenant, to the new user on terms. And that was a really great niche because of a number of reasons. But they just don't have access to the financing and they don't have the cash either to acquire a home. So I did about 7 of those. Sold out of those notes to another investor. Then I went to Air Force pilot training, and this was in 2011. Once again, and I was going to move. I knew I was going to move back to Kansas City, and I knew once again that I had no money, no connections, and very little experience at this point. So I said, let me at least fix one of those. So I saved about $75,000, my life savings, by living in a fifth wheel RV with my dog for 2 years to cut living expenses. So it gets better. It gets better, Sal. So I think
No, I
I'm
love
sure you
it.
heard the story, but yeah. So then I moved back to Kansas City. This is 2013. I saw on, of all places, realtor.com, a 12-unit apartment on the wrong side of the tracks. Once again, I didn't have anyone to tell me not to do it. I got the financing. I bought it for $19,000 a unit. Little did I know that my timing was quite fortuitous because things were starting to hit the upswing in 2013. I did that 12 unit. I didn't have any money to do another one. My parents said, hey, we'd like to get involved. So we did another 12 unit. Same situation. It worked out really well. Then I started biting off more than I could chew. I did a 44 unit on seller financing on terms in 2015. That was a humongously successful deal. And then I ran out of money. My circle of friends and family, that rubber band had been stretched. So I sold off the other 12 units, had a little bit of a nest egg, but didn't want to stay in those smaller apartments. So I started looking outside of my circle, and I found a ultra high net worth individual who had just sold his company to Warren Buffett, and he knew real estate pretty well, and he wanted to get involved. And we did a couple of deals together, and that really was the rocket fuel moving forward. But one of the challenges that I had was at that point is even he was only going to put so much into one sponsor effectively, even though I made him a significant amount of money and his family. And so I had to start looking out and expanding more. And that's when I came across you, Sal, I think in 2016. It's been that
Oh
long,
boy.
2016,
Oh,
2018. Yeah,
oh my gosh, almost 10 years ago. Oh my gosh.
it's getting there. So, but at least we both gotten more handsome in that period of time. So
Yes, and you were growing facial hair too. So you're not the young buck that I remember, 8 years
I'm
ago, which is
not.
absolutely amazing. So
I'm
this is
not.
interesting. I was at a conference yesterday and they had some sports stars, some NFL people there, actually who would be great investors for you. And I'll make that introduction for you. But one of the
Perfect.
things that they were talking about is that they had a lot of discipline because I mean, these weren't just any athletes. I mean, they're NFL players, they got their MBAs. One of them was the fastest sprinter that broke 5 records. And these are people who I gravitate towards. And one of the things that I love talking to them about afterwards were the fact that, how much discipline that they had that they needed to use in order to pursue anything that they were doing in entrepreneurialism, which is the same thing that we're doing, only they're doing other things maybe. But being from an entrepreneur standpoint where you eat what you kill, how did the skills and disciplines you developed as a Navy pilot contribute to your success being a GP going forward with this? How was this communicated to some of your larger investors and maybe starting out?
Yeah, just a small correction, Air Force pilot again.
Air Force, I'm sorry.
Uh,
I'm sorry. I just
no
watched
worries.
Top Gun again, so I had to.
I know. That's just fine. Like I said, I would be proud to be a naval aviator. I
Okay.
just don't really like
That's
boats.
fine.
So yeah, I mean, anything in life worth doing, you have to focus, right? There's just so many setbacks, and if you're not desperate to want to do something, you really should not do it because you will not stick with it. It just doesn't make sense. And the athletes that you're talking about is the exact same thing. Going through pilot training and continuing to fly for the military, if you really, really don't want to be a military pilot, you should not do it. The same thing goes for, especially as long as I've done it.
Okay.
And the same thing goes for entrepreneurial real estate. So to answer your question about how I communicated that, in 2016, I believe, I wrote a book called uh, Real, excuse me, Flight Real Estate Flight Plan. I forgot my own book.
Okay.
And what that does is that took my military experience and how that related to my investment experience. So there's a lot of chapters in there. One of them's titled "Drinking from the Fire Hose," which is about learning a lot of information all at once, sort of akin to trying to take a drink from a fire hose.
Mhm.
There's a lot going on there. So that translated really well to my early years in commercial real estate, climbing that learning curve. There's another chapter, Fight for Centerline, which really talks about staying focused on what it is that you need to do. So as a pilot, you want to land on the center line of the runway, obviously. And there's a lot of things that are going to try to push you off that center line. The wind could be doing that.
Mhm.
Any number of issues there. So, and the same thing, like when you have a goal, you want to keep going right to that center line, but something's always going to be pushing you off.
Mhm.
The economy, setbacks, people that say they're going to come through that don't. So it's about keeping track of that goal. So I wrote that book to hand out to investors, to hand out to other interested parties on how it is how I work and how they can use the same techniques that I use in the Air Force into commercial real estate.
Yeah, wait until you have three books. You'll always forget the names of at least one of them. I was at a conference yesterday and I couldn't remember at dinner exactly the name. We were actually at Fleming's, if you remember, and I couldn't remember the name of my
Right.
second book. I'm like, I'll just send it to you. Anyway, so the book
Yeah.
really helped as far as like cementing your credibility, right? I mean, as an Air Force pilot coming into this industry where people are looking for the smartest and most capable, obviously, to be stewards of their capital. Could you explain about some of the reception you received or your book has received?
Yeah. So I've actually written two books. The
Two
first
books.
one,
I only got one.
yeah.
I'm waiting for the other
Uh,
one. Thank you.
okay. Okay. I'll send it on over. The first one is about what we discussed there, and the second one is about how ultra high net worth individuals can do due diligence on their sponsor.
I love it.
I think there's 88 questions in there. It's
Hmm.
effectively a DDQ that was derived from some other sources and tailored to what I believe that those folks that are doing direct investment need to know and need to be asking those questions. And I think that when you take the time for anyone to write a book or a white paper or an extensive due diligence questionnaire, a DDQ,
Hmm.
and then not only that, but also have answers to what they should be looking for from those sponsors or from those GPs, from those syndicators, whatever term they may go by.
Hmm.
I think that shows an incredible level of discipline and thought and dedication to the business.
Yeah. It's also immediate legitimacy too. Coming out with two books,
Right.
that means that you really care about what you do for a living. It's not like you're slogging in and out,
Yeah.
like most people today through a profession. You're actually in the trenches and you're able to communicate that well. And I think I would love to have a copy of that. This is news to me, Seth. I mean,
Okay.
I thought we were a
I
little
wrote it
tighter than
about.
that.
I must have. I'm remiss. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to put that in an email and send it out to our group because they would love to see that. And obviously, as we're
Perfect.
going through our next real estate deals, that would be great. So, I think, when we work together, you chose me out of all the people out there on the internet, on LinkedIn, on well, not so much LinkedIn, but on YouTube, Facebook, the get rich quick people, all of that stuff. Specifically, what were you looking to accomplish at that time, and what were you looking for me to do for you?
Sure. So at the time that I came to you, it was not a overnight decision. I think I had
Okay.
listened to every single one of your podcasts. I think I had read everything, every word that you had written before I ever reached out to your office
Okay.
years ago. The difference, Sal, between you and those people you see on, Instagram or YouTube is really the sophistication and the been there, done that. So I've always been maybe enamored by people that work at the white shoe investment banks. That was a door that was never ever open to me. They wouldn't even let me take the campus tour, you know. So, but I've always thought, the Goldman Sachs and so those other firms. So having that background that you had, and at the time, 8 years ago, I was much closer to your 29 years old when you started raising a bunch of money
Yes.
too. And I said, well, if he can do it, how hard can it be, right? It's difficult. So it's not an overnight thing. So you were significantly more professional, and you had a track record in the background, but also it was clear that you had a lot of runway ahead of you, to borrow a military aviation jargon. A lot of the guys that you see on there, they may have some deals. They're doing things deal by deal. They're not necessarily putting the structure together. Anybody that can, write a $10,000 check gets in their deal, and you
Oof.
most certainly are not like that. So. And then also, I felt, selfishly, that you'd be able to help broaden my network and reach as well, which you have certainly done in the last few years.
That's true. So we keep in touch. You come down to Miami, although you didn't come to our Trump Doral event. That was a raging success. You're always invited to come to
I
the
know.
next ones. You know, we'll
I
just
saw that. It was my son's birthday, so decisions were made, unfortunately. Sorry, Sal.
yeah, he'll have another one. All right, that's great. So
God willing, yes.
yeah, no. So, I just want to jump to, I think, a certain part here, and you've already talked about a lot of other things, but I think specifically you said raising capital isn't easy, and it's not. And I think one of the things I hope that I imparted upon you is that this is a relationship-based business, and especially coming out of, the pandemic when there was Bitcoin, NFTs, Bored Apes, and everything trading with no value, but that, low interest rates will cause that to happen, right? People looking for creating value in other ways. This is much more relational, not transactional. That's very transactional. And so when it comes to your personal time that you spend, networking relationships are very, very important factors. I think the second rule of real estate, that's been around, I don't know if you know it or not, is always be raising capital. Have you built and leveraged your network in the commercial real estate industry where you live? Have you branched out from Kansas City? Do you travel a lot to conferences now? I mean, not mine, of course, but the next one, I'm hopefully it will be. But what do you do? What's it? And of course, I'm giving you grief for good reason. Um,
I know how
but
you are. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, have you branched out now? I mean, you've tapped out your local market, you tapped out all the big whales. What do you do on a day-to-day basis as it relates to only the networking and relationships, and how much time do you spend?
Hmm. If you're not careful, you'll spend all your time on networking, because it is a seductive thing going down to Miami and New York, and everywhere in between. It also kind of gets a little spendy when you're, staying at the Beverly Wilshire, which I did. So yeah, there's some conferences that I know that you've frequent, like the IMN. I think those are probably good starts. There's other more high dollar ones that you can really get spendy on,
But are they
and
worth
you
it?
meet
I
people
mean,
there.
yeah, I mean, but I mean, comparatively
Yeah,
speaking, if you get invited to
yeah,
free to one of, okay, so continue on that, please.
right.
So there is
So let
there
me.
is a barrier to entry. Is that correct?
There is a barrier entry. I got to meet Magic Johnson when I was in Los Angeles at the Beverly Hills,
Oh, wow.
um, and I, got a couple minutes with him, and he is doing crazy things. He's he's gone to Mars as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, you meet a lot of really great people. Actually, I'm going back and forth with a gentleman I met a couple of years ago at one in Boston.
Hmm.
He works for a multi-billion-dollar family office in Manhattan.
Okay.
Um, just a great guy, and we haven't been able to connect yet on a deal. But I'll tell you what, if nothing else, the insights and the mentorship that I get from him is I think it's priceless. I mean, it's great.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, so I mean, if you're starting off locally, you'd be surprised about how many people you can meet if you just ask them to lunch.
Yeah, and
But yeah,
okay, that's a good question. I can tell you like some of the ones staying at the Beverly Wilshire, like I'm sure you were talking about the Milken conference. There's Salt, there's all sorts of higher end conferences. But people who are starting out, they don't need to go to. But when they get to your level, when they have a few notches under the belt, then it makes sense to go there because your experience attracts the bigger guys, which is amazing. With that said, Seth,
yeah.
Air Force pilot extraordinaire turned real estate mogul. How often do you interact with your current investors? Do you use social media, phone calls, dinners? I'm big into emailing and I send out and the email to me is important because everybody sees it and I get to see who doesn't see it, especially investors who ask me for tax forms and say, well, you got to start opening your emails more, right? So, that's one
Mhm.
of the things that I do that I'm very, very evangelical about. And, we make that very clear that we're very interactive, but I know you are too as well. What do you do?
What I try to do is a lot of folks will go out and just comment on some article they see in Globe Street or something along those lines. What I try to do is actually create value by this is what I am seeing. These are the conversations I am having. This is the good things that I am doing. This is the progress of this project that you did not invest in and how well it's going. And that's mainly through just phone calls and direct emails. So rather than sending out blast emails, I try to tailor them to the individual
Hmm.
um, and make it something that they would be interested in reading as opposed to just another newsletter in their inbox. I think that creates a little bit more of a personal experience.
Yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. So thinking about that too, when you're talking to investors, I know that there's some people who are going to be reticent. Everybody has different risks. I shouldn't say that, but everybody has different idiosyncrasies as it relates to their understanding of money, right? And money has a lot of emotion attached to it as well. What are some of the misconceptions prospective investors, LPs, have about commercial real estate investing and how do you address them? I already can answer this. You wrote two books on it, but when you're meeting
Yeah,
someone first, yeah, and that's my answer is like, well, I wrote the book on this, or I wrote the book on that, and I like to hand it out to them, and I'd like to hand out your book on the DDQ, the due diligence questionnaire. But as
right.
far as your concerns, what do you see?
I think the biggest challenges are twofold. If they don't have experience necessarily in commercial real estate, then you have to educate them. And like you said, you can talk to the books on that. Uh, um, the one that's even worse is if they have preconceived notions on real estate. So they read something in the Wall Street Journal or see something on CNBC about how the sky is falling and interest rates are destroying real estate values, and they say, okay, well, we don't want to do that. But like there's always another side to that coin that someone's buying these things for cheap,
Mhm.
and that's the side of the coin that we want to be on. So educating them on how you can actually go about turning lemons into lemonade. Quite frankly, I think this is one of the best times. One of the things that I'm doing a project right now in development where we're converting about 200,000 square feet of office property into multifamily.
Oof.
And yeah, so there's a lot going on there, a lot of moving parts, but the air is very stratified. We bought the property for like $10 a square foot. So
So on a
you
basis, what does
could,
that mean? Is that like 10 cents on the dollar? Is that 60 cents on the dollar? What, just
oh,
on a relative value?
yeah, I mean, if
If
you're
you had a guess,
buying
of course. Yeah.
yeah, I would say if you're buying a performing office building in Kansas City right now, you're going to pay probably $130 a square foot plus.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
and that's not the best stuff either. I mean, that's Class B, needs some work, and
Yeah.
that stuff's just eating dirt right now. But you can convert those because they're very well located, a lot of them, and they have the floor plates. But that's a whole nother conversation.
No.
Um, but yeah, so you buy it for just like nothing. I mean,
Yeah, you
you
have
buy
to.
two hundred
Yeah.
thousand square feet. You buy
Yeah.
200,000 square feet for $2 million. Plus, it came with 6 extra acres of land that we're planning on putting townhouses out on. So it, there's two sides of the coin. So office is taking a dump, and but there's someone there that's going to pick it up. And I think that's one of the tough parts is educating people on
Yeah.
what they see in the media and then how they can actually profit from that.
No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. No, that makes sense. Can you tell me, like, when you're talking to investors, especially when you're segmenting them, are you talking to them people who have never invested in real estate, meaning that they're not used to illiquidity? Because there's an illiquid version to this that a lot of people are very uncomfortable with, but I think they're becoming more and more comfortable with it now as time goes on. Does that make sense?
It does. I try not to take on people that don't understand real estate or liquidity, simply because of those challenges that you mentioned. But a lot of times, people have liquidity in assets and they just never exercise that. So really, what's the difference?
Yeah, I think that's the point too. And I think a lot of people get scared because they cannot get their money back. And I think, the one thing about NFTs and crypto is that it's liquid, but I think liquid is not really a store of wealth today, and people are understanding that. A creation of wealth is exactly what you're doing right now, and that's doing the heavy lifting. I mean, that's doctoral level deal making right there, Captain. As it relates to, what you're doing in the office to residential. That is not an easy thing to do whatsoever. And we love to follow you off on that, which would be absolutely amazing. I think, I just have a
Perfect.
couple questions here and then we'll just round it out here. But I think,
Yeah.
one of the things is to, to just, what we didn't figure, what people are figuring out the hard way is that a lot of LPs went into things and they were thinking that their GPs understood the capital markets. Before you met me, and I know that a lot of people don't think about this, and especially other people, especially who are, getting into the space. There are people, the books and tape people and all of that. And although I've written a lot of books and recorded a lot of videos, one thing that I always like to make sure I put across to people is the importance of the capital markets. Because if the capital markets turns, what happens? I mean, were you it sounds like you were using discretion. You could have bought a lot and you could have hurt your investors and gotten into trouble with that too as well. And on top of that, you made some pretty good decisions because when money was loose, people were buying and people were coming in. And you have to remember, like during the last great financial crisis here, hold on one second. One of the things that we're worried about here is that what were the circumstances as it relates to the capital markets for your ability to be able to structure deals carefully without hurting your investors?
Sure. So when times were good, and by good I mean low interest rates, and
Hmm.
everybody's going nuts, I sold the portfolio,
Sure.
everything that we owned. It was out the door. I probably could have held on for another year, but that's just the trader's curse, right? We sold everything in the beginning of 2021,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and we were out. Yeah, we were out. We sold at a record low cap rate in the market. And other brokers were actually calling me, congratulating me on that because they came in, they bought it, and we did really well. So now, when I think about capital markets, I'm specifically thinking to debt, and debt will kill a deal faster than anything else, other than possibly a
Time.
bad partnership. Sure. So when it comes to capital markets, yeah, it's right now the interest rates are higher, even for construction and spec stuff, but it's not insanely higher. You can still make deals pencil. Land isn't trading. Um, Properties aren't trading that are existing, and I think there's a lot of. I think that's we're coming to an inflection point on that, but maybe a little
Hmm.
bit more later than sooner.
Yeah.
So if that's the largest piece of the capital stack, you have to be absolutely careful with that. You are playing with fire while juggling swords. And right now, my outlook, as we sit here in March of 2024, is that there's a lot of, specifically in development, that people are being a little short-sighted on,
Hmm.
and not moving forward with zoning and entitlements, and not moving forward with even completion or starting the projects, because they are going to have. You want to be the only one delivering when
Hmm.
no one else is.
Correct.
And once again, you're going to hit that bottom. Maybe we're there now. I don't know, but eventually it's going to go back up. And I know it's going to go back up because I'm a huge demographics fan. I love demography, and us millennials, we need someplace to live. There's more
Hmm.
of us than any other generation in history, and now there's no construction. So how does this add up? So I think that in the next 5, 10 years, especially in construction and development, there's going to be a lot of opportunities,
I think
and you
so
can catch
too.
people flat-footed by doing your homework now, doing your push-ups today, because beach weather's coming. And so that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Sharpen your axe. No, of course. I'll just leave it with one final question here because this has been
Mhm.
absolutely amazing. And I could sit here and ask you more questions, as you know. But what advice would you give to someone with or without a military background considering a transition into the real estate investing group and the syndication being a GP? What would you tell them?
You have to gain as much knowledge as you can. Um, you need to find the appropriate mentors and coaches. I have done
Hmm.
that with you, Sal. I've done that with half a dozen other professionals. There's a lot that you're going to learn on the job as well,
Hmm.
and you don't want to not have an answer for them. Giving them an answer in 24 hours is fine, but not giving them an answer at all, or even worse, just giving them a horrible one, that's not good. So you need to go back to phone a friend.
Yep.
Phone a friend if you have a question, right? So
Hmm.
really, that's your mentors and coaches that you can help with.
Hmm.
Know that you're going to be uncomfortable. Uh, you know, I remember picking up the phone the first time calling your office. I was uncomfortable.
Hmm.
I was like, this guy knows a lot more than I do, and who am I? I only had, I don't know, maybe 300 units at the time,
Hmm.
but that's going to happen. There's going to be setbacks. You'll need to adapt and overcome. A lot of this was written in my first book, quite frankly. Start small. Uh, don't bet your
Hmm.
farm. Don't bet the farm on the first deal. Actually,
Hmm.
don't bet the farm on any deal. Don't do that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, a profit is a profit. You don't need to. You don't need to kill it.
Hmm.
And then just stack up those wins and climb the commercial real estate ladder. I mean, let's just over 10 years ago, I was doing mobile homes, and last year I got a term sheet for $50 million with a debt to go with it. So so
Yeah.
and I have some more stuff to bend your ear on, Sal, going forward,
I'm
because
always available for you.
there,
Yes, that's fine.
there's another opportunity that's coming up,
Hmm.
and it's a heavy 9-figure deal, and I would love to be in position to be able to take advantage of that. So
I would love to know more about that.
okay, perfect. So just start small. It's a process. It's a career.
Yeah.
It's not like these guys on YouTube show you that,
Yeah.
they're all muscle
Mhm.
bound. Why are they always so fit too, by the way?
I don't know.
It's
Remember?
like they spend more time in the gym than they do in the office, or making these YouTube videos, I think.
There was a time that I went through my dumpy developer stage. I've lost about 55 pounds, but you remember that.
Good
And
job.
I had no
Yeah.
time during distressed real estate to be going to the gym, managing
Yeah.
funds, and just basically splitting pay. So yeah, I always wondered about that. Everybody's so jacked on the internet. Like, how do these guys have
Yeah.
time to do what you do, what I do, and get jacked? Like, I can barely put an hour into the gym, but when I am, I'm always using that time to talk to investors, especially ones that have
Right.
that go into holding patterns, where they don't like to get off the phone. If you're on the treadmill, that's a perfect, like, oh, gotta go.
Perfect. Yeah.
Anyway, I
Yeah.
really
So I.
appreciate that. No,
Yeah.
that's really, I mean, you've come a long way, a long way, and I'm very proud
Thank
of
you.
you. Of course, your family and everyone around you is, and I love making these referrals of higher end people, in your neck of the woods, who read about in my book and have met. So I really do appreciate doing that for you.
I have. Yeah, that's been a lot of fun meeting some of those folks, and
Yeah.
they're characters, but I'll tell you what, they're smart and they are insanely well connected.
Yeah, they are. And for the 9-figure deal, that could be one of them right there as well. All right. Well,
Perfect.
this is great. I appreciate it. If people want to know more about this, they can go to salvatorebuscemi.com. You can book a call. I think you click on there, salvatorebuscemi.com, book a call, and I'll put that in the show notes for this. Seth Wilson, it's a pleasure and a privilege. I mean, keep
Thank
us
you.
posted. Albert just got back from our roadshow in Asia for 3 weeks, and there's a lot of whales that are looking for
Oh,
real
good.
estate. For those who are listening, the U.S. is still a great place for rich people to invest, and there's a lot of money still coming here. So that's going to help you. That's going to help Seth. That's going to help myself. So, Seth, thank you very much, Captain. I appreciate it. Wonderful. And is that the right title, Captain? You're smirking. It's not you.
No, I haven't been a captain in years. I'm lieutenant
Okay.
colonel.
Lieutenant Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel, we support you. Thank you
Lieutenant
for your
colonel. At
service.
ease.
Thank you.
At
Lieutenant,
ease.
at
Yeah.
ease. Okay. Thank you,
Lieutenant
my
colonel.
friend.
That's right.
Take care. Okay.
All right.